Okay, so picture this. You've got two houses, right next door to each other. One backyard is just this collection of lush, volcanic gardens. It's always changing. The other, it's a huge, sun-baked desert, ancient and, well, kind of still. That's pretty much the story of Indonesia and Australia. They're separated by just a tiny stretch of water, but you'll see, they are worlds apart in almost every other way.
And the first thing that just jumps out at you is the people, the sheer scale of it. Indonesia has a population of nearly 280 million people. That makes it the fourth most populated country on the entire planet. And then right next door, you've got Australia with just 26 million. That massive gap is really our first big clue that we're talking about two completely different national stories here.
So to really understand these differences, we have to start from the ground up, literally, with the very land they're built on. For one, it's a world of volcanic fire and thousands of tropical islands. For the other, it's a continent that's been shaped by an ancient, epic drought.
And here's where that fundamental contrast really becomes clear. Indonesia, it's the sprawling archipelago. We're talking thousands of islands forged by constant volcanic activity. Australia is basically the opposite, one single, gigantic, and incredibly old and dry landmass. And this difference in geography, it's not just about pretty scenery. It really does shape everything else that follows.
You see, Indonesia's geography is always in motion. It sits on the super volatile Ring of Fire, which means it has 147 active volcanoes. That leads to a lot of earthquakes and eruptions. But, and this is a big but, that same volcanic activity creates unbelievably fertile soil, which in turn supports these lush rainforests that are just teeming with life. We're talking orangutans, tigers, and even the world's largest flower.
Australia's natural world, on the other hand, is defined more by stillness and dryness. You've got the huge arid outback that covers most of the continent, and that's why most of the population is pushed to the more fertile coasts. This ancient, isolated environment also led to a totally unique evolutionary path, which is what gave us all the marsupials, kangaroos, koalas, that are famous all over the world.
So, how do these completely different environments affect the people who actually live there? Well, that brings us right to our next section, a tale of two very, very different populations.
This is where the difference becomes truly mind-boggling. On Indonesia's main island, Java, the population density is over 1,000 people per square kilometer. Just let that sink in. That's 1,000 people living, working, and moving around inside a single square kilometer.
Now look at Australia. The average population density across the entire country is just 3.2 people per square kilometer. Not 1,000, 3. That one comparison, 1,000 versus 3, tells you almost everything you need to know about the completely different realities of space and daily life in these two neighboring countries.
Now, despite its massive population, Indonesia is made up of hundreds of distinct ethnic groups. Their national motto, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which means unity in diversity, is a huge part of their identity. It's this core philosophy of embracing all these cultural differences, but under one single national banner.
And you can see that diversity so clearly in their languages. Indonesia managed to unify its many, many islands with one national language, Bahasa Indonesia, but at the same time, over 700 local languages are still thriving. Australia is also very multicultural, with over 300 languages spoken, but that's largely thanks to modern immigration alongside its ancient indigenous languages, with English being the dominant one for everybody.
All right, now let's get into the really fun part. Let's explore how all these factors, the geography, the population, actually translate into culture, community, and, of course, the food.
Indonesia's landmarks really reflect its deep history and its dramatic geography. You have these magnificent temple complexes like Borobudur and Prambanan, which are just these incredible testaments to ancient spirituality. And then you have the raw power of nature, from the epic volcano Mount Bromo to the iconic rice terraces of Bali, and of course, the unique home of the Komodo dragon.
Australia's landmarks, well, they tell a bit of a different story. It's one of modern ambition set against this incredibly ancient landscape. So you've got architectural marvels, like the Sydney Opera House, but you also have the deep spiritual significance of Uluru, which is really the heart of the continent, and these vast natural wonders like the Great Barrier Reef.
And yep, the differences go right down to the dinner table. Indonesian food is famous for its complex flavors, its spices, all found in amazing dishes like nasi goreng and rendang. Australian food, meanwhile, kind of reflects its British roots with classics like meat pies, but it's really defined today by a modern barbecue culture, which is a direct result of a lifestyle built around wide open spaces and good weather.
So what does all this mean for daily life? Well, it really boils down to a set of trade-offs. Australia offers a really high standard of living. It's clean, it's safe, but it all comes at a high cost. Indonesia, on the other hand, provides a much lower cost of living and these incredibly strong community bonds. But that can come with challenges, like less reliable infrastructure and lower average wages. It's really a choice between two very different ways of life.
And that kind of brings us to our final thought here. When you look at these two nations side by side, you see how a foundation of volcanoes and islands versus ancient dry earth creates two completely different paths. It really makes you wonder how much of who we are is actually written in the land itself.